We might sound like a broken record at this point when we say that this team needs power. They need power protection for Pete Alonso. Now, as for some power bats that are available, there's definitely some slim pickings on the free agent market. So that definitely looks like it might influence the Mets to turn to the trade market. Billy Epler has mentioned that he will be opportunistic when something comes towards his way, and now we are going to give some of those choices for this area. So here are 5 power hitters that the Mets should trade for to protect Pete Alonso. Now, you'll definitely start to notice a trend throughout this list. These are players that most likely could play the outfield if you need them and provide flexibility, but they don't play it fairly well. Some of these guys could stay healthy if they are DHing and give you a lot more production at a higher volume, and some of them are relatively healthy, and we're basically just looking at these guys because they are good power bats.
The same problem that we've been talking about for, it seems, about 75 million years. Like when the dinosaurs were around, the Mets still needing a secondary power bat that can consistently hit 30 home runs. And with the free agent market pretty much being dried up, Billy Epler needs to pivot here, and these are better options than going out and signing a bunch of 37-year-old corner outfielders that suck, that were never that good. These are just some extra options. Yes, it's going to cost you prospects, but desperately in need of that power.
We're not really asking for this. We're kind of just telling Billy Epler to do something for the power protection. Because if you look at the lineup we had last year and the lineup we have right now in front of us, it's the same thing. And that wasn't good enough to go all the way. So let's start off with the first power bat, Anthony Santander. Santander is 28 years old. He's a switch hitting outfielder, 6'2", 235. He really hit his stride last year, slashing 240, 318, 455 with a 120 WRC plus, smashing 33 homers and driving an 89 in 647 plate appearances. With his plus bat to ball skills and hybrid ability from each side of the plate, Santander displays a perfect balance of power and contact from the right side and pure prolific power from the left side. This is 100% an outfielder who doesn't play the best defense and could benefit from being a DH on a regular basis.
Switch hitter, again, the Mets would be a flexible, another switch hitter in this Met lineup with him and Lindor. Balanced last year at 33 home runs. Not great defensively. Could platoon maybe him and Canada every day, alternating from that DH position. Get him off his feet. Also with Canada. Has 2 more years of team control, which you, again, if you're going to trade a couple of assets, which it's going to cost a couple of, decent assets to get Santander, you do have him for 2 years, not just this season, but next year. Fitting in with that Mets 2-year time window. 30 homer bat. He's only done that once in his career. But playing Camden Yards, they moved that big fence in left field, and still being able to hit 33 in Camden is way more impressive than it used to be when everyone was hitting 30 in Camden. So he could be a guy, left fielder. Him and Canada, we've both said our issues maybe with Canada regressing this season. If we're just talking pure power bat with the switch hitting ability and the team control being cheap, it will cost a decent prospect, but it's definitely an idea that, Billy Epler could look to, because it does look like he's available and teams are calling. You might have to get into a bidding war, but this bat could be worth it.
It's definitely not the number one option that you definitely have to protect Pete Alonso, but I can tell you right now, someone who could provide value from both sides of the plate, who could provide you some power from both sides, and also be a very good situational hitter, which is something that I like about Anthony Santander. He was actually my pick to win Rookie of the Year when he was a rookie. Now he's definitely come into his own recently. He still has the upside. He's still young, and it definitely could be a contributor of power protection for Pete Alonso. Another thing that I do like about this is that it also subtracts the need for a possible lefty-righty platoon, kind of cancels out the possibility of Daniel Vogelbach, Darren Ruff, maybe even Mark Vientos, and you can have a switch hitter taking up one roster spot that provides value from both sides of the plate offensively. And that brings us to the second power hitter on this list, which is definitely somebody that we touched up on a little bit, possibly acquiring him in a package deal for Liam Hendricks. That is Eloy Jimenez. This is definitely a name that has popped up once or twice with the Mets, as the Mets and the White Sox do have pieces that they could have interest in going back to make each team better and be a win-win for both sides. Eloy Jimenez is 26 years old. He's a huge power threat, 6'4", 240. When Jimenez is healthy, he destroys the baseball. As of last year, he was slashing 295, 358, and even 500 with a 144 WRC plus, 16 homers, driving in 54 in 327 plate appearances. Most of Jimenez's health concerns revolve around him playing a position in left field. With the Mets currently rostering 3 starting caliber outfielders, the likelihood of Eloy not DHing would be slim in this lineup. I personally think that he is a perfect fit, and his leverage splits are also elite. It would be great in the middle of this lineup. That is definitely somebody that I would 100% go for to protect Pete Alonso. Out of all 5 of these guys, he is at the top of my list. Is it possible that we get him? Who knows? This would be my number 1 priority for power protection on the trade market.
Not having to play left field, where the White Sox had to have him in left field because they had no other outfielders where they needed his bat in the lineup, and he would fit perfectly in that 5 spot behind Pete Alonso. If you take him off his feet and just make him that full-time DH, can you get away from that injury concern? But when he's healthy, he's going to average 30 homers, driving 80-plus RBIs, and just tear the cover off the baseball. And that's the type of guy the Mets need in this lineup. He's on a great contract for his value that he produced. You've got him for 4 years of team control. What's it going to cost? It's probably costing you Ronnie Mauricio, and that's been links that the White Sox, before Liam Hendricks was diagnosed with cancer, prayer up to Liam, there were links that the White Sox did want Ronnie. Is it worth giving up your best trade chip? Yes, it's a game changer, but he's a DH. I think it definitely for this season it would be important. We'll see down the line if there's another DH coming, but we're not going to talk about that guy. But Eloy would be a game changer in this lineup, making him a full-time DH, and it can finally get rid of Darren Ruff and Daniel Vogelbach if you want to move Ruff or Vogelbach for some prospects, re-deepen your farm system, and have an everyday pencil the guy in a DH and not have to worry about the position ever.
And I'm sure we'll talk about the trade flexibility of Ronnie Mauricio and how if the Mets were to go star hunting, maybe in this offseason, we don't know if they are, or if they go star hunting at the trade deadline. But at this moment, trading Ronnie Mauricio for a DH is definitely a risky, especially a DH who has those injury concerns, but you definitely could get somewhat of value out of it because he would not be playing in the field, which has definitely been one of the main bugaboos of his actual injury history. Is it possible that trading Ronnie Mauricio could be a desperation move for actual power? Possibly. And with the Mets having their eye on a certain player for next year, I don't really think that Ronnie Mauricio really has a future here, but that is another video. And that brings us to Seth Brown. Seth Brown was a possibility from Oakland that they could be moving him this offseason or maybe possibly at the deadline. Seth Brown is definitely a late bloomer for sure. He is 30 years old. He's a first baseman / corner outfielder, 6'1", 223. Brown came off quite the silent breakout year in 2022, mainly because he was playing in Oakland and that team is terrible, slashing 230, 305, 444 with a 117 WRC plus, 25 homers, driving in 73, and 555 plate appearances. Brown is a fairly disciplined hitter with quite the dead pull launch angle swing that could definitely benefit with the new dimensions in Citi Field. He's very quick to the ball, and his natural power is definitely a huge strength with the high ball and the low ball. This is definitely more of a supporting cast type of power bat as compared to Eloy Jimenez, but definitely an option out there.
A guy that's nobody's talking about because I think there was a total of about 56 people who went to see the Oakland A's play a game last season. With back-to-back seasons of 20 homers, he's that kind of complimentary guy who could just hit, be that secondary guy. I know we make a big deal about protecting Pete, but he could be a guy in the second part of this lineup where you have the top 4 that is pretty locked in. You'd like the 5th guy, but Seth can be that guy in that second tier of the Escobar-Canna levels. Now hopefully it's Beatty and then maybe a different left fielder, being that secondary offensive production power. Right field, moving an offense in 10 feet to play to a lefty power hitter. We'll see what Oakland would trade him for. They traded Sean Murphy for a box of disco fries, and they've traded other guys for nothing, so you can fleece Oakland. They don't really want actual good players, and we've seen him on the trade market after back-to-back seasons. He will be hitting arbitration, so Oakland does not want to pay him. Buy low, under the radar type move, kind of like with the Mets signed Mark Canha and Eduardo Escobar. Really, nobody really knows about him, but could be a very productive player down the line.
Now, after the season that he just had, it's definitely possible that he gets, a couple million in ARB1 because of the value of these left-handed power bats in the game. We all know that Oakland probably does not want to pay that. I personally think that this has a really good swap with Daniel Vogelbach, who is making $1.5 million this year. So it's definitely cheaper for Oakland. And even though we're pretty much splitting pennies in the sense of Cohen ball here, the A's are pretty much the complete opposite of that because they're a bunch of cheap. So you can definitely swap out the terms of the contracts for Daniel Vogelbach and Seth Brown. In this case, Seth Brown can actually provide some defense and more flexibility than Daniel Vogelbach, but we all know that the A's are always looking for those cheap deals to lower the payroll to $0 a year. Jorge Soler. Now, Soler signed a 3-year deal with the Marlins last year. It is possible that they could move him because the Marlins have been known to trade in division. At 31 years old, huge pull-hitting outfielder, 6'4", 235. Soler is coming off of a rough year last season, plagued with injuries, slashing 207, 295, 400 with a 98 WRC plus, 13 homers, driving in 34 in 306 plate appearances. Soler does project fairly well next season, especially with the shift going away, and also the Mets could buy low with his value down, taking on his contract and possibly adding a 25 to 30 home run bat when healthy.
Got the big deal after the World Series MVP run with the Braves. Did not pan out well in Miami year one. His contract is worked very unique where he has 3 one-year opt-outs pretty much. He didn't opt out after last season. And could Kim Ng, we've seen make trades in division with Duvall back to Atlanta. Would Kim Ng be willing to know that if he does have a good year, he's probably opting out into a couple of assets? Or will it be the Mike Rizzo syndrome where, hey, no, I'm not trading in division. No, that's not happening. And Soler would fit perfectly as that DH. He's led the American League in home runs in 2019 with the Royals in Kansas City. So that's a giant ballpark for a guy to hit 48 homers. He's a guy who can put in this lineup, if healthy, pop 30 homers, and that's the type of guy who needs to be behind Pete Alonso. I wouldn't put him in the outfield. He's making $12 million. Would Miami want to move that off just to move the money? And then we'll see what happens after the fact. But he is a guy to keep in mind. It is an in-division trade, which we'll see if they want to do it. Remember, they didn't want to trade us Duvall in 2021, but then ended up trading him to the Braves. So if we give him a decent prospect and see what to move, an extra 4th outfielder, which I wouldn't recommend putting him in the outfield, but he does give you the flexibility. You can stick him in the corner. If he stays healthy, can pop you that 30 homers. And if you have another guy who plays catcher hitting 30 homers, now you've got a more lethal bottom of the line.
Jorge Soler was one of my main guys I wanted the Mets to go after last offseason. If the Mets could use the high AAV that Soler is under to their advantage and maybe get away with, giving up one minor leaguer or whatever, they wouldn't have to overpay for a glorified DH. I don't think it should be the only power bat that you bring in here, but it definitely is something that can definitely help and anchor the bottom of your lineup. Last but not least is another buy low candidate, Max Kepler. Kepler currently is 29 years old, balanced corner outfielder with power and contact, 6'4", 225. Just like Soler, Kepler is a buy low candidate after his rough 2022, slashing 227, 318, 348 with a 95 WRC plus, 9 homers, driving in 43, and 446 plate appearances. Kepler, I think, is one of the most likely out of this 5 because he is more of an Epler bat, puts the ball in play, gets on base, doesn't strike out that much, etc. Just another primary outfielder who could stay healthy at DH, and he also could increase his volume of power throughout the season.
His name's been thrown around with a bunch of teams who need corner outfielders, including the team across town. But for me, he's the type of guy who could be a buy low candidate and could be that corner outfielder, 4th outfielder, making $7 million a year. Has another year of team control with a club option. So again, it's a 2-year deal. You're not getting him for just the rental, and if he sucks, you do have the control if you want to move on from him after the season. Take it for granted, he did have one big 36 home run season, but obviously the year of the juice ball. But in 2018, 20 homers, 2017, 19. So he can consistently round up a good season. He's going to hit you 20 home runs a season. Most likely to be moved before spring training. Of this list, he's definitely going to move, and he's actually really good defensively. So there will be teams interested in Max Kepler. So again, it's a bidding war with Yankees and any other teams who are in desperate need of outfielders. But I definitely see the 29-year-old getting moved. Definitely, I think a guy Billy Epler would be interested in, and a definite guy who can take some ABs and maybe help be the everyday left fielder, making Mark Canha the everyday DH or every other day.
Another thing that you can put out there with this possible situation with Max Kepler is that currently the Twins' projected DH is Nick Gordon. Not the type of DH that you want, and they currently have him projected to be batting 9th. It's possible that one of our DH bats could go back in this trade. I don't know if it is Mark Vientos, but maybe it's a Darren Ruff, maybe it's a Daniel Vogelbach. Definitely fills a need that Minnesota would want. So you look at all these candidates. Who do you want the most? Who do you want the least? Rank them. Go ahead.
For me, obviously, Eloy is the number one guy if we're just talking strictly power bat. Then I'd probably go with Kepler because, again, the versatility of him being a good defender and maybe being the everyday left fielder. Then I go Santander, then Seth Brown, then Soler. I just prefer the left-handed bat. A little bit more valuable than Soler. I think Soler could have more of that power upside of being that consistent 30-homer guy. But I just prefer the left-handed bat, especially with the new Citi Field dimension. And the Mets kind of desperately prefer a power left-handed bat to pair with Pete Alonso.
I think I'd do probably the same order, but I'd probably flip Santander to my number 2 spot of who I'd want. I just like the versatility that he provides offensively, where he could be a switch hitter and he could provide you power and a little bit of contact. He's a good situational hitter. He's also young. He's got that upside where he has quite a few years ahead of him. He's got those years of control. So I think that that's something that I would look out for. I think the top guys I'd go for is Eloy Jimenez and then Anthony Santander. But other than that, we cannot stress enough. Please get power. And once again, please get power. Once again, and I'll say this one more time, please get some power in this freaking lineup.
See other teams, the ball goes boom for them a lot more. I want to see the ball go boom for us too.
Ball go boom. Give me my dingers. I want the ball going far over the fence. Thank you very much.